The moment you heard it for the first time, something in you believed it. We're a family here. And why wouldn't you? It felt like belonging. It felt like safety. It was neither. What you were actually handed in that moment was the most sophisticated psychological trap in the history of modern management. And today, we are going to dismantle it. Think about what happens when a company tells you, "We're a family." You start picking up your phone at 11 p.m., not because your contract says to, but because family doesn't clock out. You skip vacation days because family doesn't leave when things get hard. You say yes to the extra project, the extra shift, the extra year without a raise, because family makes sacrifices. And the whole time, you thought you were being a good person. You weren't being manipulated. You were being loyal. Here is the thing nobody tells you. Those two things are not always different. Loyalty and manipulation can feel identical from the inside. That is not an accident. That is the design. There is a concept in dark psychology called manufactured intimacy. It is the deliberate construction of emotional closeness. Not because it's real, but because closeness is useful. When someone feels close to you, they give more. They ask for less. They tolerate more. They stay longer. Corporations understood this before psychologists even named it. In the 1930s and 40s, companies like Eastman Kodak and Hershey literally built towns around their factories. They provided housing, schools, churches. They called it corporate paternalism. Translation: we own your work, your home, your community, and your loyalty. All at once. The family framing is just a modernized version of the same architecture. It doesn't require a company town anymore. All it requires is a phrase. "We're a family here," said in an onboarding session, printed in a company handbook, repeated by every manager who learned it from the manager before them. And here is where it gets psychologically dangerous. The word family doesn't just create a feeling. It creates a framework, an invisible rule book, a set of obligations that never appear in your contract, but feel more binding than anything your lawyer ever reviewed. Because here is the rule inside that framework. In a family, you don't negotiate. You sacrifice. Now, let's talk about exactly how that is used against you. In 1984, social psychologist Robert Cialdini published a book that changed everything: Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. In it, he identified one of the most powerful forces in human behavior, the reciprocity principle. When someone gives you something, anything, your brain immediately creates a debt, not a metaphorical debt, a neurological one. Brain scans show that receiving a gift activates the exact same neural pathways as owing money. You feel an obligation. You feel compelled to give back or give more. This is why free samples at the grocery store have a 700% better conversion rate than standard advertising. This is why your dentist gives you a free toothbrush. And this is exactly why your company throws you a birthday party, why they bring in free lunch on Fridays, why the CEO learns your kid's name, why they call you family. Every single one of those gestures is a deposit into your emotional debt account. And when it's time to collect, when they need you to stay late, skip the raise, or absorb a layoff without complaining, that account gets debited. And the genius, the dark genius of this system, is that it never feels transactional. It feels like you are choosing to give, because family doesn't calculate. Family just loves. But let's be precise about what is actually happening. You are providing labor above your contracted rate. In exchange for emotional currency, belonging, validation, identity, that costs the company almost nothing to manufacture. That is not a family arrangement. That is an extraordinarily efficient business model. And it gets worse. Because the reciprocity trap doesn't just affect your time, it goes after something far more valuable: your boundaries. Here is a question nobody asks. Why does burnout happen to the most dedicated employees? Not the ones who check out, not the ones who do the minimum, the ones who care, the ones who believed. The answer is terrifying in its simplicity. Burnout is not a malfunction of this system. It is the expected output. Here is the mechanism. When your employer successfully frames your relationship as familial, a boundary-crossing event becomes an act of love instead of a violation. Can you stay late tonight? Stops being a professional request you are allowed to evaluate. It becomes a loyalty test. And you know what families do with loyalty tests? They pass them every time, because failing means you don't really care. This is called psychological contract violation, a concept developed by organizational psychologist Denise Rousseau. When employees believe they are in a relational, not transactional contract, their mental accounting changes completely. They don't count the hours. They don't track the favors owed. They don't enforce limits, because limits are for strangers, not for family. And so the boundary between personal life and professional life doesn't just blur, it dissolves. Your Sunday afternoon starts with a work thought. Your dinner conversation drifts to a project. Your 2 a.m. insomnia is about a presentation, not your dreams. The company didn't invade your life. You invited it in. Because that's what family does. And the cortisol accumulates. The sleep degrades. The relationships outside work atrophy. The identity outside your job title quietly disappears. Until one day, the answer to who are you outside of work is silence. That is burnout. Not a weakness. Not a personal failing. A predictable, measurable consequence of a psychological architecture that was built for exactly this result. Now, I want you to imagine a specific moment. The moment that breaks everything. You've given everything. Years. Maybe a decade. Maybe more. You've missed birthdays. Skipped vacations. Said yes 1,000 times when your body was begging you to say no. You believed in the mission. You believed in the culture. You believed that the family was real. And then, one ordinary Tuesday, you are called into a room. The HR person is already there. And in less than 4 minutes, you are no longer an employee. No ceremony. No acknowledgement of what you carried. No gratitude proportional to what you gave. Just a severance package. Carefully calculated to meet the legal minimum, and a reminder to return your access badge. In that room, in that moment, the mask finally falls. And what's revealed underneath is not malice. What's revealed is far colder than malice. Indifference, because the transaction is complete. The resource has been reallocated. The spreadsheet has been updated, and the word family, that warm, powerful, all-consuming word, is nowhere in the room. Research from the University of British Columbia found that employees who described their workplace culture as family-like reported significantly higher levels of betrayal and psychological trauma following layoffs than those who had always maintained a professional framing. The closer you believed, the harder the fall. The investment in that word wasn't yours alone. It was returned to you, at full force, the moment it was no longer useful. So, what do you do with this? Do you become cynical? Distrustful? Closed? No. You do something far more powerful than that. You reframe. Here is the reframe that changes everything. Your company is not your family. But that doesn't mean the relationship has no value. It means the relationship has a different kind of value. One that is actually more honest, more stable, more respectable. The problem was never that work isn't family. The problem is that you were sold a family relationship, but given a transactional one. Without being told, that deception, that gap, is where all the damage lives. Philosopher Honora O'Neill, in her work on trust, argues that authentic trust requires honesty, competence, and reliability, not emotional manipulation. When a company uses manufactured intimacy to extract compliance, it isn't building trust, it is counterfeiting it. And counterfeit trust, no matter how convincing it looks, collapses the moment it is tested. I want to give you something concrete, something you can use starting today. I call it the professional contract. It is not a document. It is a mindset, a lens, value before loyalty. Your loyalty should be earned by consistent, fair treatment, not manufactured by emotional language. Until it's earned, operate on value exchange. You bring your best, they compensate fairly. Period. Borders are not betrayal. When you decline after-hours demands, you are not being a bad employee. You are modeling what a sustainable professional relationship looks like. Name the dynamic. The moment you hear, "We're a family," don't react emotionally. Translate it. Ask yourself, what is this phrase trying to make me agree to without negotiating? When you can name a manipulation, you neutralize it. It loses its invisibility. And invisible weapons are the only dangerous ones. Invest in yourself first. Maintain an identity that doesn't need a company logo to be whole. None of this makes you cold. None of this makes you a bad colleague. It makes you honest. The most sophisticated manipulation is the one that makes you feel like you chose it. "We're a family" doesn't look like control. It looks like love. And that is exactly why it works. But you've seen it now. You can't unsee it. And there is a specific kind of power that comes from the moment a manipulation becomes visible. It stops working. You are not an employee trying to prove your family. You are a professional, choosing to be here on terms that serve both sides. If this hits something you've been feeling for years but couldn't name, that is exactly what Subtext is here for. We pull the invisible mechanisms into the light. Hit subscribe if you want to keep seeing clearly. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can give someone is a language for what they've already lived. See you in the next one.